doing a video today, not before time, to denounce 88 millimeter flak in the strongest possible terms. And he is to be denounced and excoriated, and this I intend to do today. We have to talk about 88 millimeter flak because 88 millimeter flak is the problem with the world today. He is the personification of what is wrong with the world today. 88 millimeter flak. And a lot of people don't understand that, so I'm going to explain it to them. And this has been coming for a long time. I want to talk about this. And Il Ragno, if Il Ragno was still alive, God rest his soul, Il Ragno wouldn't necessarily side with me, but he would definitely explain to Flack, because a lot of the times he was talking to Flack. When he talks about how you're an old boomer and you're going to die in the nursing home alone, attended by a third world nurse or whatever who ignores you, and you're dying and you're living in agony, and you're thinking about it and you're saying, "Why, God?" And then the phone is disconnected to heaven or whatever, and that's Flack he's talking to. Flack is the problem with society. So we're going to break down Flack a little bit. Flack is supposedly this entrepreneur who runs the fora, only he doesn't really run the fora. He hasn't run the fora for a meaningful period of time. Flack is kind of like me. I understand this because I ran the Stumble Inn for a while, and if you don't have either a loyal IT person or you know how to do stuff yourself, you're going to get pushed out just, by that alone. You're going to get pushed out of your sinecure or whatever, your internet warlord seat. You can't maintain being an internet warlord until you have an intimate knowledge of vBulletin and all the, updates and stupidity involved with vBulletin. For whatever reason, there are a lot of forums out there that are still going strong that they aren't constantly doing vBulletin updates. But for whatever reason, white nationalist forums seem to always be having problems with vBulletin, and that might be on purpose, actually. But in any case, Flack was in control of the fora at one time, like 15 years ago, but he has not been in control. And I'm not kidding when I said 15 years ago. It's like 2007 when he was in control of the fora. Actually in control of the fora, when he was allowed to make decisions about the fora. And this is his life. It's his life. And his life was pathetic 15 years ago, and it's pathetic today. JJ used to mock him, and I didn't understand that. I thought, Flack's kind of a cool guy. Why is Jay making fun of him, calling him Mein Fuhrer of the lawnmower? JJ was, in my opinion, second second to only to Il Ragno in terms of being a humorist. And so Flack was absolute dictator of the fora for some time, but he didn't found the fora. I don't know how he ended up in charge of the fora. That's one of those mysteries that nobody can quite explain, and nobody wants to. And nobody wants to look into it either. But obviously, it was started by Hunter Wallace back in the day, and John DeNugent quite early on started an extended thread on it until they ran him off, called "Apocalypse of the Psychopaths." And by psychopaths, I think he largely meant sociopaths, because there are a lot of sociopaths in this field, and that's kind of how things are run, in the field of people management. I'm talking about overall management, not managing people at work, but managing people in their social lives, in their social media, in their socio-political existence. You need a sociopath to manage the socio-political existence of people, and that's where Macrobius comes in, amongst others, only he's terrible at it. But you see these people that come out of this, and then you see a structure that forms, and you see John DeNugent, who claims he's been persecuted all these years. Turns out it was true. But it interferes, people like DeNugent interfere with the personnel management. So you had the home to these brilliant thinkers, Thomas 777, Il Ragnowitz. In heyday, they had Helios, and they had Roland, and a lot of these smart guys. There's probably half a dozen other guys I'm not thinking of. Jake Featherston, Kevin O'Keefe, one of my great friends, uh, inherited a lot of money and disappeared from the internet. But a lot of quality people. 1-800 was a good poster. Niccolo and Donkey, a lot of great fora posters. And in the age of the fora poster, the sociopath had to play a long game, a manipulative game, because he couldn't just completely uh, use his personality to dominate in such situations, because there were so many other big personalities around that it was difficult to play games when you had that many big dogs running around. And usually the sociopath is not a big dog. Macrobius was a minor figure on the internet for many years until all the big guys went away, and now that everything's a ghost town, suddenly Macrobius is living out his dream to be an important internet poster. He's living out his posting career, and now that there are no other posters to challenge any of his ridiculous assertions, now is the ideal time to do that. Shut up! And so this is all going on, and we're going to talk about Flack and how he lost control of the fora, very similarly to how I lost control of the Stumble Inn back in the day. And I don't want to go on forever, but let's look at Flack himself as a poster. This guy, he's, moderate white nationalist, whatever. The guy is like a lot of white nationalists. He's unmarried. He's never had a girlfriend. He's never had any issue in terms of progeny. He's never even come close to having children. He's never come close to having a LTR, long-term relationship. He's never even, probably in the time he's been posting at the fora, had a girlfriend in the past 20 years. Yeah, since 2002. Yes. Since 2005 now. How time flies. Never had a girlfriend. And this is not me saying this. I think Flack will pretty much be honest enough to back up all my assertions here. It's a matter of fact, So Flack inherited a house from his parents. And if he hadn't, he'd be living in a van down by the river. No kidding. He'd be living and posting out of his van or RV, and it might not be by the river anymore. He'd be living in an RV in somebody's backyard, or working. What's the guy's name what's the show? The Mexican comics. He's a Mexican comic. Iglesias, but doesn't he have a tree service?
I don't know.
It's a yard service or a tree service or something. Anyway, that would be Flack. Flack would be the white version of that, And, honestly, if his parents had had any other children, it doesn't matter how destitute Flack is. They would have almost certainly left everything, or, the house and whatever else, their few possessions, to the other siblings. But they didn't have anybody else to leave the house to, so they left it to Flack. And that's how Flack has a house. And how he can afford to maintain his business. Because if he had to pay rent, he'd be up the creek without a paddle. If he had a car payment, he'd be up the creek without a paddle. Because his tree trimming business, you have to understand, a lot of people live very sheltered lives in these circles, and you don't understand what it's like to run a business, or anything like that, or what it's actually like running a business or being an entrepreneur or doing anything, as a matter of fact, that involves leaving your house. But tree trimming is a crackhead job. Tree trimmer is a very low-level profession. And, at one time, I know Flack used to mow lawns, too, which is a very Mexican profession, and that's probably how he got into white nationalism. He was competing with all the Mexicans and losing to them. And, he probably felt like, he needed to become more anti-immigration, because, he was losing all the lawn mowing jobs to Mexicans. And for whatever reason, I have never been involved in the lawn mowing business, but it just seems like every few years, the lawn mowing guys, next thing you know, they'll have a big pickup truck, or, a big rig with all these equipment, and obviously they owe the bank a ton of money on all that stuff. But you'll see them just get that in just a few years of mowing lawns. And for some reason, Flack has never been able to acquire everything. All his vehicles are like '80s era vehicles, and which he probably inherited from his parents. So today, Flack ekes out a bare existence, a minimal existence. He has no employees. He has no insurance. He has no woman, no children, no motivation, no reason to live except posting on the forum. That's all he has. That's his only hobby. That's what he does. He has nothing else, nothing whatsoever in the world. And then you see these videos where Flack tries and fails to demonstrate his prowess with a chainsaw. You know. Now, why does he fail to demonstrate his prowess? Am I saying that Flack has no prowess with a chainsaw? No, I'm not. I'm saying he fails to demonstrate his prowess with a chainsaw because after years of owning a GoPro and after years of making videos, he can't tell a story. He can't edit videos. You know, he can't do any of that. He can't explain to people what he's doing that's cool. I'm a chainsaw man cutting down this Widowmaker. I understand. I understand what he's doing because I've done that. And I understand the level of skill and the level of his skill and all that. I appreciate that. Great. Unfortunately, unless you know what you're looking at, nobody else does. And that's why his videos get no views. Like, no views. And people think my videos get no views. Well, Flacks get a fraction of my worst videos. So, Flack can't get views, but he can and will appreciate the narrative of his own damnation and destruction, which I'm about to unfold. So, what's going to happen to Flack? Flack's already had a heart attack. He's already gone to the hospital. He's already had a hospital stay. He's already had to, start paying that. He already has made no attempts to get insurance. So what's going to happen to him as he gets older? He's going to, and this is a thing that's going to happen to a lot of these old folks. He's going to end up in a home, and the state's eventually going to have to seize his assets to pay for his declining years, and he's going to die in that home, taken care of by some recent immigrants. Probably they'll keep him doped up, all the time. He won't be able to access his precious fora anymore, and he's just going to have to watch TV all day. Nobody's ever going to come to visit him, and he's going to die alone without friends or family or any kind of interaction with the outside world except these immigrant caretakers that Il Ragno has joked about many years ago, and that's Flack's future. Now, when we look at Flack's future, it seems rather dismal. It seems rather unfortunate, and you think, why would Flack go down this road? Well, Flack, you think this is a bad road, and it seems like the path of least resistance when you are confronted with that crossroads. You can follow me in my path of blood and honor, or you can go down this road and end up in a nursing home, and you're going to lose it. Either way, you lose everything. And, if you look at it that way, you think, is it worth disgracing myself and, my future? I'm going to have a miserable life and die in a miserable death, an unhappy death. Is it worth, betraying my principles, betraying the only person who could have been my friend, betraying everything in exchange for this miserable end? And that's what Flack decided. He decided that it was worth the miserable end that he is going to face, assuredly. There's no way out for Flack. There's not a single way out. Is it, that is the future he chose because it looked like the easier path. because allowing the feds and individuals like Macrobius to have full reign over his forum and not following my path, Legion of Mishima, organized resistance, all that. I outlined a very clear path, and I've done it for many years. I've done it at least since 2014. And so Flack had the opportunity to go down that road, as did many other people on these forums, whose end will be equally not only ignominious but painful. You know, you thought this was you thought my way was hard and impossible. Well, the way you're going is going to be worse, and this is what you get for being yourself, for being afraid of the unknown, for being afraid of change, for being afraid of greatness, for being afraid to attempt anything. You're going to die miserably, and you're going to lose everything anyway. Was it worth it? It's hard to say that. It probably was worth it to a bourgeois slob like Flack, and to most of these bourgeois slobs on these sites that were, their main issue was, a petulance from losing their economic status to third worlders. That was what it was never about honor or nobility or restoring anything or greatness or American greatness or whatever. It was all about petulance at losing their economic status to third worlders. That was the basis of it. There was no nobility of character or soul about it. And consequently, they can suffer the consequences accordingly. So what happened with Black? Let's talk about my recent banning at the beginning of the year. So, you have to understand that all the great personalities have left the fora. So I decided to return to the fora and bring personality back to the fora, because right now the fora has no personalities. You have Macrobius, who is basically an internet virus, running around, basically some type of AI the feds activated. And, so obviously one would think the relics on the fora would enjoy having some return to greatness. But no, they don't want any return to greatness. They want to decay. They want to go the route. They want to go, having gone this far down the route they are on, they want to go even farther, and they want to go harder down that route. We're going to press the accelerator, bring the hammer down. We're going to, what's the full speed ahead and damn the torpedoes, and to hell with everything. We are on the way to meet our fate, to realize our destiny of ignominy. The old folks home is waiting. We are not going to keep them waiting. Those immigrants waiting to make our lives, our last years miserable. They're waiting. We must not keep them waiting. So, the pauper's grave, for some reason they're always keeping that waiting. I wish they would hurry up with that one. But anyway, so yes, bottom line is I returned to the fora to make the fora great again, basically. I'm going to make the fora great again. What happens? Cheesy Pie posts right after I do, to point out that this is all a fake and it's all a front. I post, an old joke back in the day, and I get banned for that after it's repeatedly deleted. Now, I don't get warned about it. It's just repeatedly deleted, and then I get banned because I keep posting it. So obviously, there's no warning, which is against the TOS or whatever. Not that I care. But then Cheesy Pie the same day posts actual porn, and it's not banned. Now, I don't care about any of this. I'm not saying, oh, it's not fair. My point is, you have to understand that this was done specifically to make a point to me, and that point is this is all a setup. The people who post here are posting here for a reason, and they have special rights and privileges accordingly to accomplish the ends that they were detailed or you know put in charge to complete or put in those positions to post there. So the fora today serves a purpose as a kind of like oh, a little setup, a little a structure wherein you can manipulate people. And I'm trying to say well, you might even go to a level of like professional wrestling, where all the characters are basically wrestlers being manipulated by the management, which is kind of the storyline. Is that not the storyline for the '90s wrestling? Yeah, so all these personalities are being manipulated by the management or administration, which is Macrobius and his henchmen or henchwomen. And so what to what end? Well, we can figure a few things out. We can keep track of these people. Potentially we can use them for terrorist attacks or other sundry purposes. We can experiment on them. We can do all kinds of stuff. We can experiment with methods. They don't need to be necessarily fatal or anything like that. But we can. There's a lot of things we can use this forum for now that it's derelict of actual talent. And that's why the fora is still around, because Flack couldn't afford to keep it open on his own dime. And so this is why you'll see people attack Lindstedt. You can make black into white. People have been doing it for years. And you see this with Lindstedt, Pastor Lindstedt. Pastor Lindstedt's this, realist, basically. And yes, he comes across in a gruff manner. So Pastor Lindstedt got taken in by the PSYOP years ago. He might argue that it was something different, but basically Pastor Lindstedt decided to start talking in a very coarse manner to get his point across. And I think more recently he's realized that it doesn't work, but it's kind of too late now. But he started talking in a very coarse manner, specifically to try to be understood by the lower echelons, lower levels of society and the internet posters. And he failed in this, and all he got, all that happened was people thought he was a vulgar, coarse individual. When he was just trying, he wasn't. He was just trying to get his point across to people he thought were vulgar and coarse individuals. And so Lindstedt's points were all very salient, very basic. Now they look back and say, exactly. Nothing he said was radical or crazy or had any anything that was wrong with them. It made perfect sense. He had good solutions. All that makes sense now. Nobody's going to argue with it. Who understands the core issues involved? But people thought he was a madman 20 years ago. People thought, and he encouraged that to try to get his points across better. And it wasn't a good strategy, but it was what it was, as they say today, as the Zoomers say. It didn't work. It was not a good idea, but he did his best, But the point is, if you think of Lindstedt as anything more than a sober realist who had a better understanding of the political process and what was going on in the world, instead of some crazy person, as a lot of people did, a lot of people didn't understand that. I always had respect for Lindstedt's judgment. Most people didn't. Now you see the city of Granby, they didn't listen to Lindstedt. Now they're in a mess, And people say, what's the big deal? Well, you're in a mess now. You didn't listen to Lindstedt. Your future is pretty much over. Your property is going to be seized. You're not going to have any issue in terms of descendants. And so your life is pretty much over right now. And you're a normal, this is Flack. But, it could have gone a different way. You could have sided with me. That's my point. And this is my point to a lot of my viewers. I'm putting this on both the channels. Because the bottom line is all of you are like Flack. And you're all going to end up in misery and suffering. And, it's going to be very ignominious, too. It's going to have a very unfortunate end because you didn't want to follow me. And, or at least even cooperate with me. Or even, not actively cooperate with the powers that were seeking to censor my message. That's all you had to do. If you just left the playing field somewhat level. But that's the thing that's the worst part of the thing about 88 millimeter Flack and his type, his ilk. He is representative of a type that will absolutely abet the psychopaths and sociopaths and people who just want to maintain the status quo. And they will absolutely support them at every step, even though they claim to be opposed to the system or opposed to elements of and aspects of the system. They will absolutely, when things come down to the nitty gritty, they will absolutely fall in on the side of the system and its adherents and its supporters and its the powers that be. And this is why you have to eliminate the class of people like Flack first before you try to attempt anything, because these are the people who pretend to be, ideologically similar to you, but in fact, they are always waiting to fall into line with the powers that be. And this is why, Flack is going to suffer, and this is why you're going to suffer. I'm not threatening Flack. I'm just saying this is the end of Flack, and there's nothing that can be done. There's nothing I could do for Flack at this point. He's chosen the path that he's going to go to, and it's a very sad one. It's a very unfortunate one, and there's no hope for him, and there's no hope for you either.